The clatter of crystal flutes celebrating the newly appointed communications director had barely died down when a harsh wheeze clawed its way out of my chest, sharp and shrill like a busted tea kettle. My name is Rowan Pierce, a specialist in restoring rare books, far more familiar with dust motes and quiet rooms than with extravagant gatherings like this. I looked painfully out of place among tailored jackets and rehearsed grins. My sister Blair stood at the small stage at the front of the private lounge, her flawless smile glowing beneath the warm amber lights. She leaned toward the mic with that polished media smile that never quite touched her eyes. "Here we go again," she said, her tone soaked in mock fatigue. "Rowan, don't make a scene. It's just mushroom soup. There's no crab. Or do you want to ruin my promotion party?" Awkward chuckles spread across the room. Blair believed she had landed another clever jab, performing for the audience the way she always did, soaking in their focus and approval. What she failed to notice was the man seated directly across from me, Mr. Victor Hale, the group chairman and the very executive who had just approved her promotion, staring at my soup with pure alarm. Victor Hale's daughter lives with a severe shellfish allergy, which means he understands anaphylaxis all too well. He recognizes the signs when a throat starts to swell shut. Before I could even grasp what was unfolding, Victor was already on his feet. He yanked an EpiPen from the inner pocket of his $5,000 suit and rushed toward me with a speed that seemed unreal for a man of 58. But to make sense of how I ended up on the edge of death, I need to rewind a bit. Earlier that night was meant to be a small celebratory dinner marking Blair's promotion, held in the VIP room of a 3-Michelin-star restaurant where booking a table required months of waiting and a limitless credit card. Soft golden light washed over the space, making it feel ripped from a luxury magazine, while crystal chandeliers spilled light overhead. Dark wood panels lined the walls, and the air carried the weight of inherited wealth mixed with sharp ambition. I am 26 years old, and despite that, I have already built a reputation as a conservator of antique books. In academic circles, some refer to me as a surgeon of history due to my detached manner, relentless logic and deep grasp of preservation chemistry. I handle volumes that are hundreds of years old with the same care others might use to disarm explosives. My hands have rescued manuscripts that endured wars, floods, and flames. My work demands stillness, patience, and reverence for delicate beauty. Blair, meanwhile, is 29 and had just climbed into the role of public relations director at Hale Global, one of the biggest multinational firms in the nation. She projects glamour through designer outfits, immaculate hair, and a smile she can flip on or off instantly. Where I am reserved and precise, she is brash and careless. Where I protect, she tears down. Our parents, Leonard and Vivian Pierce, both 60, are notoriously image-obsessed. That evening, they sat glowing with pride over Blair's new title, basking in second-hand prestige. They loved to brag about her powerful job, her network, her visibility. At the same time, they constantly belittle my profession, calling it dusty or gloomy because they fail to grasp its value. To them, I am the let-down daughter who picked books instead of boardrooms. The strain that led to my poisoning, yes, poisoning, because that is exactly what it was, started long before the party ever began. Blair had been lingering in the restaurant lobby earlier that night when Victor Hale walked in. She tried to stop him, hoping to pull him aside and present a press brief she had drafted about Hale Global's newest acquisition. She craved his focus. She wanted his approval. Instead, Victor noticed me standing near the coat check, and his expression shifted with real curiosity. He walked straight past Blair and spent a solid 20 minutes talking with me about the deacidification of historical paper. He asked precise questions about pH levels, buffering methods, alkalization, and the differences between European and Asian paper fibers. He was genuinely engaged. He even mentioned a set of 18th-century letters his company had recently acquired and asked whether I might advise on preserving them. I watched Blair the entire time. I saw her jaw clench. I saw her hands curl tightly at her sides. I saw fury ignite behind her eyes. This night was meant to belong to her, her spotlight, her triumph. Yet there I was, the younger sister with the dull career, drawing the attention of the most powerful man in the room. Blair's envy was unhinged and dangerous. She wanted to embarrass me. She wanted to convince everyone that I was fragile or worse, pretending that my allergy existed just to manipulate people to draw sympathy to center myself. She believed a trace of crab wouldn't truly harm anyone. She assumed it would only make me itch, maybe break out in hives. She wanted me exposed in front of Victor, In front of our parents, in front of everyone who mattered. So she laid her trap. I didn't witness it directly, but later reconstructed it through staff accounts. Blair excused herself from the table roughly 30 minutes before the soup was served. She located Chef Laurent in the kitchen, a chef famous for inventive twists on classic French dishes. Chef Laurent, she said, flashing that blinding PR smile. I have a special request. I keep hearing people rave about your crab fat oil, the one used in your signature bouillabaisse base. They say it's incredible. Chef Laurent smiled with pride. His crab fat oil was well known among critics, made by slowly rendering roe and fat from blue crabs, infused with aromatics until it became liquid gold, amber-toned, rich and intensely aromatic. I was wondering, Blair continued, if tonight, on such an important evening for me, I could try something unique. Could you add just a hint of that crab oil to the truffle mushroom soup? I think the pairing would be extraordinary, unexpected, memorable. Chef Laurent hesitated. Crab and truffle weren't a classic match, but he was an inventive chef, always open to experimentation for guests who showed sincere appreciation for his work. He considered it briefly. The umami depth of crab fat, the earthiness of truffle, the sweetness of mushrooms. It wasn't a terrible idea. It might work. Very well, Miss Pierce, he said with a slight bow. For your special night, I'll prepare one bowl with the crab oil as an amuse-bouche before the main soup service. Thank you so much, Blair replied warmly. You're a true artist. What Chef Laurent didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was the plot behind her request. He had no idea Blair had a sister with a severe shellfish allergy. He had no idea the bowl he prepared with such care would become a weapon. When the soup was served, it looked exquisite. The waiter, a young man named Ethan, placed the bowls gently on the table. Mine bore elegant reddish-brown oil swirls across the surface, catching candlelight and gleaming like molten copper. Blair leaned close to me, her voice gentle and sisterly. I asked Chef Laurent to add a little smoked chili oil and pine mushroom essence to yours. She said, I know you find rich food overwhelming sometimes, so I thought this would make it easier for you to eat. The chili adds a nice warmth without being too heavy. I should have known better. I am careful by nature, and that instinct is what makes me good at what I do. When your hands work on objects that have survived 4 centuries, you learn to doubt everything, to test each method, to confirm every single step. But this time I failed myself. My sister's excitement, the opulent room, the warm gold glow all blurred my judgment, and the soup itself was a flawless illusion. The powerful aroma of truffle mushrooms filled the air, deep and earthy. The amber sheen of the crab fat oil was indistinguishable from truffle oil. The mushroom fragrance completely covered the faint seafood note I might normally have noticed. I suspected nothing at all. I lifted my spoon and took a small bite. Tasted incredible, layered, savory, complex. For maybe 5 seconds I believed Blair had done something thoughtful for me. Then my throat started to close. The reaction hit fast and brutally. My airway tightened as if an invisible hand had clamped around it and squeezed. My lips tingled, then burned, then swelled. My tongue thickened, filling my mouth and cutting off air. Angry red hives burst across my skin, spreading over my arms and chest like fire. I tried to stand, but my legs failed me. The room tipped. I slid from my chair and slammed into the thick carpet hard enough to steal what little breath I had left. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't speak. All I could do was claw at my neck and force out awful wheezing sounds that barely sounded human. And through it all I heard my sister laughing. Not nervous laughter, not panic, but victory. TC, Blair said loudly. She's eating mushrooms and pretending to be allergic to crab. This year's Oscar for Best Actress goes to Rowan Pierce. Some guests laughed uncertainly. Others shifted uncomfortably, unsure if this was a cruel joke or something worse. Come on, Rowan, Blair went on as she stepped closer to where I twisted on the floor. You can drop the act now. You've got everyone's attention. Isn't that what you wanted, to make my special night all about you? I tried to focus on her, to show her this was real, that I was dying, but my vision narrowed. Darkness crept in from the edges. This is how it ends, I thought. Killed by my own sister at a dinner party while everyone thinks it's entertainment, but Victor Hale was already there. Before my body had even fully hit the floor, he was on his knees beside me, the EpiPen ready. Move, he yelled, his voice slicing through the laughter. Someone call an ambulance now. Hold still, he told me, steady despite the chaos. You're going to be okay. I've got you, He uncapped the EpiPen and drove it into my thigh through my dress. The needle pierced fabric and skin, and cold adrenaline surged through my veins. The relief wasn't instant, but it was real. The crushing grip on my throat loosened just enough for me to pull in a thin, whistling breath. "Ambulance! Ambulance!" Victor shouted again at the frozen staff. "Call emergency services now and get oxygen if you have it." The manager was already on the phone, stumbling through the address. A waiter sprinted toward the bar for the first aid kit. Victor looked down at me, his face hard. "Stay with me," he said. "Help is coming. You're going to survive." As panic spread and the room dissolved into chaos, I saw Blair's expression change. The smug triumph vanished. Her smile cracked. She looked at Victor Hale kneeling beside me, at the EpiPen clenched in his hand, at how my lips had ballooned to twice their normal size. The truth was finally sinking in that her little stunt had gone far beyond anything she imagined. I didn't think," she muttered, stepping backward. My mother hurried over, her face drained of color. "What happened? What's wrong with her?" "She's having anaphylactic shock," Victor said sharply. "Someone put shellfish in her food. This isn't a joke or an exaggeration. Without this epinephrine she would be dead in minutes." My father stared at the soup bowl, then at Blair, and I saw understanding hit him. "Blair," he said slowly. "What did you do?" "Nothing," Blair replied too fast. "I just asked for mushroom soup. There wasn't supposed to be any crab in it." Before she could continue denying it, Ethan the waiter appeared beside her. "Miss Blair," he said carefully, "do you want me to clear the table? You asked me to have everything ready to clean up after." "Not now," Blair snapped. That was when the adrenaline fully surged through me. The medication was working, driving my heart faster, forcing my airways open, restoring a sliver of strength. With it came sharp clarity. I reached up and clamped my hand around Victor Hale's wrist with unexpected force, my fingers locking onto his expensive watch. He looked down, startled. I still couldn't speak, my throat too swollen, but I could communicate. I pointed toward the soup bowl, then clenched my fist and held it up, the universal signal to keep and preserve. Victor understood instantly. He might not have been law enforcement, but he was a billionaire who built his empire by reading situations and acting without hesitation. He knew exactly what I meant. "No one touches that soup," he thundered. "Security. Seal this table. This is a crime scene." The restaurant's security staff, who had been lingering uncertainly at the room's edges, moved at once, forming a barrier around the table to keep anyone away. "Mr. Hale," Blair said with a forced laugh. "Isn't that a bit dramatic? It's just a misunderstanding." "Nothing leaves this room," Victor cut her off, his voice ice cold. "Not the dishes, not the soup, not a single napkin. Everything stays exactly where it is until the authorities arrive." My mother grabbed Blair's arm. "Tell me you didn't do this on purpose," she whispered. "Tell me this was an accident." Blair opened her mouth, but no words came. Her face had gone ghost white. I lay there still gripping Victor's wrist, a grim satisfaction spreading through me. Despite the pain, the fear, and the struggle to breathe, I had used my last strength to preserve the most critical evidence, the soup that nearly killed me, the proof of what my sister had done. That was my first small victory before darkness began creeping back into my vision. The last thing I remember before the paramedics arrived was Victor leaning close, his hand steady on my shoulder, saying, "You're a fighter. Good. You're going to need that." The paramedics treated me right there in the VIP room while Victor issued orders like a commanding general. They administered another dose of epinephrine, fitted me with oxygen, and checked my vitals. My blood pressure was dangerously low. My oxygen saturation hovered in the 70s when it should have been in the 90s. "We need to transport immediately," one of them said. "She needs ER observation. Anaphylaxis can have a biphasic reaction. She could crash again in a few hours." And before they could wheel me out on the stretcher, Victor turned to face Blair. His face was set like stone. "You said this was normal mushroom soup?" he asked her, his tone dangerously calm. Blair's hands trembled as she folded them together to conceal it. "Yes," she replied, her voice fracturing. "Of course it was normal mushrooms. The girl always overreacts to everything. She's probably just having a panic attack." "A panic attack doesn't cause your airway to close," Victor said evenly. "A panic attack doesn't require an EpiPen. Stop lying." That was when Chef Laurent rushed into the VIP room. He had been in the kitchen when Ethan told him there was a medical emergency tied to the soup, that a guest had a shellfish allergy. The word struck him like a blow. "Miss Blair," he said, his face flushed with confusion and alarm. "The waiter just told me what happened. But I don't understand. You requested the crab fat oil yourself. You asked me to add it to the truffle soup. You said it was your special request." A heavy silence sliced through the room. Every gaze locked onto Blair. "You said you liked it," Chef Laurent continued, unaware each sentence sealed her fate. "You said it would be novel and unexpected. I thought you wanted to try it." Ethan stepped forward then, the young waiter who had served us all night. "And Miss Blair signaled for me to place that specific bowl in front of Miss Rowan," he added quietly. "I remember because you made very clear eye contact with me and pointed to her seat." Silence followed, thick and suffocating. I lay strapped to the stretcher, an oxygen mask covering half my face, watching my family's illusions shatter in real time. My father's complexion drained to ash. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. They stared at Blair like strangers. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't confusion. It wasn't negligence. It was intentional, calculated, and cruel. "Blair," my father said hollowly. "Tell me they're wrong. Tell me you didn't do this on purpose." Blair's eyes darted wildly, like an animal trapped with no escape. "I just thought, she always makes such a big deal about her allergy. I thought if she just had a tiny bit she'd realize she's been exaggerating all these years. I thought it would just make her a little uncomfortable. Maybe get some hives. I never meant for it to be this serious." "You never meant to almost kill your sister," Victor said, his voice razor sharp. "Is that your defense?" "It was supposed to be harmless," Blair shrieked now. "She's always been so dramatic. I just wanted her to stop being the center of attention for once. This is my night, my promotion, and she has to make it all about her and her stupid allergy." "Shut up," my father snapped, a tone I had never heard him use on Blair. She had always been untouchable, the perfect child. His words stunned the room into silence. "We need to leave," one of the paramedics said urgently. "Her condition could worsen. She needs hospital care now." They rolled me toward the exit. As I passed my family, I met each of their eyes. My mother sobbed, mascara streaking her cheeks. My father looked a decade older in minutes. And Blair looked terrified. Good, I thought. Be terrified. The most dangerous cruelty isn't loud or obvious. It's wrapped in sweetness, disguised as concern. When someone tests your survival and calls it a joke, they are never joking. They were finally revealing exactly who they were. For 26 years, I had been the accommodating younger sister, the quiet presence. The one who avoided conflict, who stayed small, who accepted being ignored, underestimated, and brushed aside because preserving harmony felt safer than pushing back. But as the ambulance doors shut and the siren began to scream, something deep inside me shifted permanently. Blair wasn't just envious. She had been willing to gamble with my life, truly gamble with ending it, all to feed her ego, all to punish me for excelling at something, for being interesting to someone important. And my parents, who had always shielded Blair, who had endlessly justified her cruelty and labeled my pain as overreaction, could no longer deny the raw truth exposed in front of them. A chill moved through me, and it had nothing to do with anaphylaxis. It was the numbness that comes when emotional ties finally snap after being stretched too far. It was the frost that forms when you stop lying to yourself about the people you love. The paramedic adjusted the oxygen mask on my face. "How are you feeling?" she asked softly. I couldn't speak. My throat was still swollen and my vocal cords would take weeks to recover. I lifted my hand and made a small gesture she read as okay. I wasn't okay, not physically and certainly not emotionally, but I was clear-minded. I was finished being the compliant younger sister who accepted scraps of affection and absorbed harm in silence. I would deal with this the same way I treat a mold-infested manuscript, with absolute precision, removing every toxic element until only clean material remains. Blair had tried to ruin me. Instead, she had set me free. Now she would learn what happens when you push someone who has spent a lifetime being careful, restrained, and quiet. You don't get an explosion. You get something far worse. You get precision. The disorder spilled from the restaurant entrance onto the sidewalk as the ambulance was ready to take me inside. Victor Hale stood near the back of the vehicle, phone already in hand, his finger hovering over his personal attorney's number, a man with direct access to the district attorney's office. "I'm calling the police," he stated. Blair rushed after us, forcing her way past security, frantic to control the story. Her heels struck the pavement in sharp, panicked clicks. This is attempted murder or at minimum aggravated assault. Miss Pierce will be arrested tonight. Blair turned ghostly pale, every trace of color draining from her face. No, she breathed. No, please, Mr. Hale. It was a mistake. I didn't mean to. You admitted to intentionally contaminating your sister's food with something you knew could kill her, Victor said flatly. You did it at a company event using company resources while representing Hale Global as our new PR director. If I place this call right now, you'll be in handcuffs before midnight. Your career will end before it begins. And given the planning involved, you're facing real prison time. My mother seized Blair's arm, her face collapsing. Oh, my sweet girl, what have you done? What have you done? My father stood motionless, his mind clearly racing through the social and professional devastation of having a daughter arrested for attempted murder inside a Michelin-starred restaurant. The fallout would be massive and impossible to contain, but I noticed something else unfolding. I saw how Victor's grip tightened around his phone. I noticed the other guests lingering nearby, phones already in hand, likely messaging friends about what they were witnessing. I saw the restaurant manager wringing his hands, clearly panicked about the public relations disaster looming over him, and in that moment I recognized my opening. Even as I lay on the stretcher with my throat still swollen and my voice reduced to a rough rasp, I lifted my hand and tugged the oxygen mask away from my face. Ma'am, please keep that on, the paramedic urged, trying to put it back. You need the oxygen. I pushed her hand aside, weak but determined. Wait, I managed to croak. The single word burned like broken glass going down. Victor turned toward me, startled. The room fell quiet as everyone leaned in, waiting. I looked straight at Victor, my eyes steady despite what my body had endured. Don't call the police. Yet, I said, each word costing real effort. The paramedic glanced nervously at my monitors. Arresting the PR director will cause Hale Global's stock to crash. I don't want to damage your assets. I dragged in a shallow breath. My lawyer will handle it tomorrow. The relief on my parents' faces was almost absurd. My mother let out a grateful sob. Oh, Rowan, thank you. Thank you. You're such a good girl, such a good sister. My father's shoulders slumped. We'll sort this out as a family. We'll sit down tomorrow and talk through everything calmly. And Blair looked at me with a blend of relief and resentment. I read it clearly. She thought I was weak. She thought I was afraid to push it further. She thought blood would outweigh consequences. Rowan, she said as she stepped closer to the ambulance, her voice slipping into that sugary, manipulative tone she used whenever she wanted something. I know you're upset and you have every right to be, but we're sisters. We're family. We can work through this. Maybe therapy, maybe family counseling. I raised my hand to stop her. When I spoke again, my voice was barely more than a whisper, but every word landed clean. My lawyer will contact you with the terms. Terms. Blair blinked, confused. For the settlement, I clarified, holding back a cough. You're going to pay for what you did. Every penny. Her expression hardened. You're going to sue me, your own sister. Would you prefer prison? I asked evenly. 8 years in a state facility or a civil settlement. Your choice. Victor studied me with something close to approval. Your attorney should contact my office as well, he said. I'll ensure Chef Laurent and Ethan provide full statements about tonight. Hale Global will fully cooperate with any legal process. Thank you, I whispered. Don't thank me, Victor replied quietly. You saved yourself tonight. Preserving the evidence was smart. Most people would have panicked. I work with fragile things, I said as I finally allowed the paramedic to secure the mask again. I know how to protect them. We need to move now, the paramedic said firmly, signaling the driver. She requires medical supervision. As the ambulance doors began to shut, I took one last look at my family on the sidewalk. They believed I had shown mercy. They believed I had chosen family over justice. They believed I was still the same quiet, accommodating Rowan who always put them first. They were wrong. I needed time. Time to build an airtight case. Time to let them lower their guard. Time to collect every piece of proof that would make what came next impossible to deny. Blair believed meeting a lawyer tomorrow meant gentle discussion. She had no idea what was coming. She imagined it could all be fixed with a quiet payoff, maybe a carefully worded apology that would let everyone move on and pretend none of this ever occurred. She had no idea what was about to unfold. I spent 3 days in the hospital. The anaphylaxis caused far more damage than the doctors first believed. My vocal cords were swollen and injured from the reaction, leaving my voice thin and weak. I was told I would need weeks of speech therapy before fully recovering. Multiple injections of epinephrine put strain on my heart, forcing continuous cardiac monitoring, and mentally I was unraveling. I suffered nightmares of suffocating, panic attacks set off by the smell of mushrooms, and a deep-rooted fear every time I had to eat. So I did not rest. I did not waste a second feeling sorry for myself. On the second day, while still connected to 4 lines and monitors, I asked my attorney, Mr. Lewis, to come see me. He was a sharp, relentless lawyer in his mid-40s who focused on civil litigation and personal injury law. I had hired him 3 years earlier for a contract dispute, and his brutal efficiency had left a lasting impression. "Tell me everything," he said, pulling out his tablet to document every detail. I told him all of it, every moment. The conversation Victor Hale had with me that ignited Blair's jealousy. Her disappearance to speak with the chef. The soup that nearly killed me. Her public admission in front of witnesses. "This is airtight," Mr. Lewis said, his eyes bright. She admitted it in front of an entire room, including the chairman of a major corporation. "We have Chef Lauren's statement confirming her exact request to add crab oil. We have the server Ethan's testimony that she directed that bowl to your seat. We have physical evidence in the soup itself. And we have Victor Hale as a witness to your medical collapse and his immediate response. I want sworn affidavits from Chef Laurent and Ethan," I said, my damaged voice barely audible, notarized before my family or anyone else can pressure them. "Consider it done," Mr. Lewis replied. "You'll have them within 48 hours. And I want a complete medical report documenting every injury, the damage to my throat, the cardiac strain, the psychological trauma, everything. Already ordered. The hospital is cooperating fully." I looked straight at him. "I want her destroyed, Mr. Lewis. Not injured, not embarrassed, destroyed. I want her to lose everything she values. Her career, her money, her reputation. I want my parents to see exactly what their golden child is capable of. And I want it done legally, cleanly, and completely." Mr. Lewis smiled. It was not a kind smile. It was the look of a predator recognizing prey. "How much are we demanding?" $900,000, I said immediately. Enough to devastate her financially, but not so high that a mediator would question it. It covers medical costs, lost income, pain and suffering, and psychiatric care. And it's low enough that she'll think she's getting off easy. "You've thought this through," he said. "I've had nothing but time," I answered. "And one more thing. I want mediation, not court. Court drags on. I want this finished fast, within 3 weeks. Can you make that happen for $900,000 in a case this clean? The defense will rush to mediation. They'll be terrified of a jury verdict." "Good," I said. "Because my silence isn't forgiveness. It's strategy." Mr. Lewis stood, closing his tablet. "Your sister tried to kill you, Miss Pierce. She deserves what's coming. She tried to diminish me," I corrected quietly. "She wanted me small, weak, humiliated. That's worse than murder. She wanted me alive so I could live with it." I sank back into the hospital pillows, exhaustion finally setting in. Then I continued, "She's about to learn what happens when you underestimate someone who spends their life handling fragile but priceless things. You learn how to protect them. You learn how to restore them. And you learn how to remove anything that threatens them completely, permanently, and without mercy." My lawyer left with clear instructions. Over the following 2 weeks, as I recuperated at home, he worked relentlessly. He secured sworn affidavits from Chef Laurent and Ethan. He gathered my medical records and expert analyses. He assembled a case file that was devastating. And my family believed I was simply recovering. They assumed I was working through the trauma. They thought I was weighing forgiveness and moving on. My mother sent lavish flower arrangements that I promptly donated to the hospital. My father called twice, leaving long, wandering voicemails about not allowing this to fracture the family. And Blair sent a message. "Can we talk? I think there's been a misunderstanding." I replied to none of them. My silence was not mercy. It was the stillness before impact. It was that breath you hold when you line up a shot, knowing you only get one chance. When Mr. Lewis called on day 19 to tell me mediation was set for day 21, exactly 3 weeks after the incident, I smiled for the first time since the poisoning. Perfect. I whispered into the phone, my voice steady and stronger with each day. Let's end this. It took 3 weeks for the swelling to ease enough that I could speak without pain and for my body to stabilize enough that I could sit upright longer than an hour without my heart pounding wildly. That was how long Mr. Lewis needed to lock every piece of evidence into a legal file so airtight that even the priciest defense attorney in the state would urge settlement. That was also how long my family waited before trying to brush attempted murder aside like a spilled drink on an expensive rug. The mediation room smelled of lemon polish and quiet panic. It was a corporate space built to feel neutral. Beige walls, a long oak table, leather chairs that creaked when you moved. The kind of room where 7-figure deals died quietly, where careers ended with a signature instead of a confrontation. I arrived early with Mr. Lewis. My hands still shook slightly from medication I would be on for the next 6 months. The doctors said the tremors would fade. I wasn't sure I wanted them to. They reminded me of what I almost lost. Blair arrived 12 minutes late as expected. Even now, she couldn't resist asserting control by making everyone wait. She wore a dove gray dress that likely cost more than my monthly rent. Her hair was pulled back in a smooth, glossy style that projected innocence. Her makeup was flawless, balanced to look composed without seeming cold. But it was her expression that made my stomach tighten. That carefully rehearsed remorse. Eyes open just a fraction too wide. Lips pressed together in what was meant to look like restrained anguish. I had seen that face countless times growing up. It was the face she wore when she wanted something, when she needed belief, when she was about to lie so convincingly she might fool herself. Leonard and Vivian stood beside her like sentries. Dad's jaw was locked in that rigid way that meant he had already decided the outcome. Mom kept glancing at me with something I had never seen before. Fear mixed with desperate pleading. They looked at me the way people stare at a countdown clock. Rowan, Mom began, her voice slipping into that gentle, calming tone she used when I was small and had scraped my knee. Honey, we're so glad you're feeling better. I said nothing. Mr. Lewis had prepared me carefully. Speak only when required. Allow the facts to speak for themselves. Do not let them steer your emotions. I rested my hands together on the tabletop, feeling the chill of polished wood against my skin, and waited. Blair leaned in, and right on cue, her eyes filled with moisture. Rowan, her voice fractured with perfect precision, a fine crack in porcelain. I need you to know how sorry I am. I swear I only thought you'd get an itchy rash or something. Maybe your throat would get a little scratchy. I just wanted to tease you a bit, get you to loosen up. Stop being so serious all the time. She reached toward me as if to clasp my hand. I drew mine away. I didn't know, she went on, tears now spilling freely. Convincing. Truly. I didn't know you would almost die. If I'd known, I never would have. So. The word cut out of me sharper than I meant it to. Hard enough to make everyone tense. My mother rushed in instantly, her version of containment. Rowan, please. Your sister made a mistake. A horrible mistake. But she never meant for it to go this far. She didn't think it would be this bad. Can't you just let it go? Let it go, as if my sister hadn't watched me seize on a restaurant floor. As if she hadn't poured crab fat oil into my soup and waited with a wineglass in hand to see the result. As if believing it wouldn't be this bad somehow excused poisoning someone. My father cleared his throat, his voice carrying that familiar authority that once kept me obedient. Rowan, I know you're angry. You have every right to be. But at the end of the day, no matter what happens, we are your only family, aren't we? Family forgives. Family moves forward. Something inside me broke free, not the way they hoped. I felt it in my chest, a final cord snapping clean. The duty, the guilt, the childhood longing that one day they might choose me first, all of it dropped away like excess weight. My voice trembled when it came out, not from fear but from fury, grief, and the dizzy clarity of someone who has stepped out of flames and finally seen open sky. No. Blair's flawless mask twitched. No, I don't want a family like this. I met each of their gazes in turn. Blair wrapped in curated victimhood. My mother clinging to desperate justification. My father armored in entitlement. I absolutely will not let it go. The quiet afterward was so deep the ticking clock echoed. Mr. Lewis chose that instant to open his briefcase. The snap of the latch sounded like a judge's gavel. Miss Pierce, he said, addressing Blair with precise detachment, stripped of affection or familiarity. You are a PR director. You've built a career on understanding optics, on manipulating narratives, on knowing exactly how actions will be perceived. He drew out a document and slid it across the table. Which means you are smart enough to know the boundary between a prank and attempted manslaughter. Blair's face drained of color. That's not I didn't. We have testimony from Chef Laurent confirming that you specifically requested crab fat oil be added to your sister's soup. Mr. Lewis remained calm and steady. We have testimony from Ethan, the server, confirming that you personally ensured the soup went to your sister's place setting. We have toxicology reports confirming the presence of shellfish proteins in Miss Rowan Pierce's system at concentrations consistent with deliberate contamination. He produced another file, then another. We have your messages to Chef Laurent from 3 days before the dinner asking about ingredients that could trigger a reaction. We have your online searches. How much shellfish causes allergic reaction? Can you hide crab oil in soup? Symptoms of severe allergic reaction. Each item hit the room like a rock dropped into calm water, sending ripples in every direction. This was planned, Mr. Lewis said, which moves it beyond simple recklessness. The district attorney has indicated they would file charges of aggravated assault with intent to cause grievous bodily harm. With evidence of planning, you are facing up to 8 years in a state prison. The color drained from my parents' faces. Blair shook her head rapidly, panic taking over. No, that's not I didn't mean. Alternatively, Mr. Lewis continued, his voice softening just a fraction, my client is prepared to resolve this matter through a civil settlement. We will waive criminal prosecution in exchange for full payment covering medical bills, pain and suffering, emotional distress and punitive damages. My father finally spoke. How much? Mr. Lewis looked at me. I gave a slight nod. $900,000. The figure hung between us like a blade ready to fall. That's insane. Blair's controlled image collapsed. I don't have that kind of money. Nobody our age has that kind of. You own a 2-bedroom condo in Riverside Heights valued around $400,000, Mr. Lewis recited calmly. You have jewelry, a car, investment accounts. Your parents have retirement savings and home equity. He leaned closer. The alternative is prison, a felony record, and civil liability that follows you for decades. This agreement includes a full release of liability and a non-disclosure agreement protecting your reputation. You keep your freedom and whatever dignity remains. My mother covered her mouth. My father stared down at the table as if the grain might rearrange itself into an answer. Blair looked at me, truly looked at me, maybe for the first time. I saw the instant she realized I was no longer the little sister she could crush. I was no longer the girl who absorbed every insult, who shrank so Blair could shine. I was someone who had almost died and decided surviving was not enough. I wanted restitution. I wanted consequences. I wanted every weapon she had used against me turned back on her. You can't do this, she whispered. I met her eyes without blinking. I can. I am. My parents stared at me with something I had never seen before. Fear. And beneath it, hatred, the kind reserved for someone who breaks the rules and refuses their assigned role. I looked away. Their judgment no longer mattered. 45 minutes of arguing followed, my father trying to bargain the amount down, my mother sobbing, Blair swinging between fury and desperation. In the end, the math was simple. $900,000 or 8 years behind bars. They signed. I watched Blair's hand tremble as she wrote her name, that polished signature used on countless PR contracts now sealing her financial collapse. I watched my parents sign as co-guarantors, their retirement traded for their favored child's freedom. When it was finished, when the documents were gathered and the terms set with full payment due within 90 days and the first installment in 2 weeks, Blair looked at me one final time. I'm your sister, she said, empty. No, I answered, standing and reaching for my coat. You were someone who tried to kill me. There's a difference. I walked out of that beige conference room, out of the building, into afternoon sunlight that felt like absolution. Behind me, I heard my mother crying and my father speaking my name with anger sharp as a curse. I never turned around. The seasons had hardly turned before I heard through a former colleague who thrived on industry gossip that Blair Pierce was out of work. The firm had dismissed her quietly under the excuse of restructuring, but everyone understood what really happened. News spreads fast in professional circles, especially when it involves someone who once flared so brightly and so publicly as Blair did. The rumors clung to her. Unstable risk. The woman who poisoned her sister. She sold the Riverside Heights condo at a loss, scrambling for fast money. Her jewelry ended up at a resale shop. The leased car was returned. Our parents emptied their retirement savings and took out a second mortgage to cover the shortfall. The first payment went through, then the second, each one stripping away a piece of the life Blair had built by stepping on others. Months later, from that same chatty source, I learned about the engagement party. One of Blair's old high school friends, someone outside PR circles who hadn't heard the stories. Blair arrived in a borrowed dress, desperation tucked behind that familiar practiced smile. She met him during cocktails. Richard something or other, old money, divorced, lonely enough to fall for a beautiful woman who laughed at his jokes. It was classic Blair. She always knew how to read people, how to shape herself into exactly what they wanted. For 2 months she played the part flawlessly. Let him wine and dine her. Moved into his penthouse in the financial district. Began posting carefully staged photos online. Look at me. I'm back. I'm fine. I'm better than ever. But no one can hide forever. Eventually the facade cracks. He caught her lying about something small, maybe where she went to college or what she'd done for work. One lie unraveled into another until he did what any reasonable person would do. He investigated. What he uncovered was the truth, not the polished version Blair tried to sell, but the real story. A woman who poisoned her sister. A woman buried under lawsuits and debt. A woman willing to hurt anyone to claw her way upward. He threw her out, not with drama from what I heard, just cool and efficient, had his assistant pack her belongings, left them in the lobby, changed the locks the way you eliminate any other threat from your life. The last I heard, Blair was working at a telemarketing office in a strip mall across town, 40 hours a week under harsh fluorescent lights, reading scripts to people who hung up on her, earning $12 an hour. Sometimes I wondered if she thought about that dinner. If she lay awake in whatever small apartment she could now afford, replaying the instant she decided hurting me was worth the risk. I hoped she did. 1 year after the night I almost died, I stood inside my library. The words still felt unreal even after months of repetition. The building was a converted warehouse in the arts district. Exposed brick and massive windows pouring in waves of daylight. The air carried the scent of aged paper and lemon oil, that distinct perfume of preserved history. Custom shelves stretched along the walls, holding volumes at every stage of restoration. Some were pristine, ready for cataloging. Others were mid-process, spines separated from text blocks, pages pressed flat under weights, acid damage slowly reversed with specialized treatments. This was my company, Pierce Conservation and Restoration. I had nearly chosen another surname, wanting to sever the last tie to my family, but Mr. Lewis had advised against it. Own it, he said. You have nothing to be ashamed of. The settlement funds were the seed. $900,000 minus legal fees, minus medical bills, minus the cost of therapy. I needed to come to terms with what my own sister had done to me. What remained was enough to lease the space, purchase equipment, bring on 2 junior conservators and build a name. Nearly dying had turned me into something of a legend in certain professional circles. The book conservator who was almost killed, who survived and then built an empire. It was grim maybe, but I didn't object. People remembered me. People hired me. And Victor Hale opened doors I never would have imagined approaching. He visited a month after mediation ended, arriving at my cramped studio apartment with a contract already prepared. My entire heritage library, he said plainly. 400 years of Hale family documents, first editions, personal correspondence. I want you to preserve them. I asked him why place something that valuable in my hands. His reply was as blunt as ever. Because you understand that some things are worth saving and some things need to be cut out like cancer. You know the difference. That single contract brought in $200,000 a year for 5 years. It gave me legitimacy, drew in other high net worth clients, and let me grow faster than I ever imagined. Now 1 year later my firm was valued at $2.5 million. I walked through the library, fingers brushing spines, feeling leather, cloth, vellum. Every book was its own universe, a preserved piece of someone's mind, someone's life. Some arrived damaged, stained by water, eaten by mold, weakened by time, neglect, and acid. I restore them with care and discipline. I reverse what I can, stabilize what remains, and when required, make the difficult call to release what cannot be saved. The work is meditative and solitary, perfect for someone who has learned that not all relationships are reparable, that sometimes the healthiest choice is to seal away what is toxic and build anew. My junior conservators, Emily and David, were in the back room handling a set of 18th century letters. I could hear Emily humming softly, the whisper of tissue paper, the calm rhythm of people who loved their craft. I built all of this without family money or family ties, using compensation from nearly being murdered. Every shelf, every tool, every carefully restored page proved I had transformed the worst moment of my life into something meaningful. My phone vibrated. A message from Mr. Lewis. Final payment cleared. Case officially closed. The third and last installment. Blair's debt, or more accurately my parents' debt on her behalf, was paid in full. I stared at the screen, waiting for satisfaction or closure. Instead, there was only quiet. I went to the window and looked out over the city. Somewhere out there, Blair was likely sitting in a telemarketing cubicle, reading from a script, listening to dial tones and hang-ups. My parents were probably in their mortgaged house, resenting me, telling each other I had overreacted, insisting that family should forgive. They were wrong, but it no longer mattered. Their opinions felt like voices from a country I had left behind, distant and irrelevant. I turned back to my library, to the restoration table where a 16th century manuscript waited. The pages were brittle, the edges dark with age, but the text remained readable, valuable, worth saving. I sat down, slipped on my cotton gloves and chose my tools with surgical care. This was my life now. I preserved what mattered. I removed what caused harm, whether it was acid in paper or poison in blood ties. I opened the manuscript carefully, evaluated the damage and planned the restoration. Outside, afternoon light slanted through the windows, catching dust motes that drifted like golden snow. My life was complete, clear, rebuilt from the wreckage of the sister who tried to kill me. And for the first time in 26 years I was exactly where I belonged.